They say power can make even good people do bad things. In hidden places where people trick each other, a man named Keith Raniere came into the picture. He made a tricky plan using power and lies. This is the story of Keith Raniere. Join us as we delve into the mysterious saga of Keith Raniere and the NXIVM Group, discovering the surprising facts behind one of America's most confusing mysteries. Keith Raniere was born on August 26, 1960, in Brooklyn, New York. He was the only child of James Raniere. When Keith was 5, his family moved to Suffern, New York. His parents separated when he was 8 years old. Raniere attended Suffern High School for 9th grade before transferring to Rockland County Day School. He completed his education in June 1978, just before turning 18. In 1982, he graduated from Rensselaer Polytech Institute with a GPA of 2.26, passing just barely and failing many classes. Following graduation, he worked as a computer programmer for the New York State Division of Parole. In the 1980s, Raniere worked with Amway, a network-based product-selling company. In 1990, he founded his own network company, Consumers Byline Inc., CBI, offering discounts for bringing in new members. Tony Natalie became a top CBI seller after meeting Raniere at a meeting. She moved closer to him in Clifton Park, New York, ending her marriage. After that, Natalie and Raniere were in a relationship for the next 8 years. In 1993, CBI faced issues, leading to investigations in 20 states. New York State sued, likening CBI to a pyramid scheme. In 1994, Raniere launched National Health Network, a vitamin-selling venture, but it failed in 3 years. In 1996, an agreement was reached with New York State about the CBI case. Although Raniere didn't admit wrongdoing, he agreed to a $40,000 fine, yet he only paid $9,000, claiming financial inability. The agreement prohibited Raniere from engaging in a similar scheme again. In 1998, Tony Natalie met Nancy Saltzman, who was a nurse and knew about hypnosis and something called neuro-linguistic programming. Tony remembered. Nancy said, "You're so wonderful. How can I help you?" So I said, "Well, you can help me with my boyfriend." He had big ideas and his schedule was getting strange again. She listened and she said, "Oh, that's easy. I can help you. He's a sociopath." They met, and 4 days later she came out looking different and told me, "You don't know who he is." And I thought, wow, there goes another one. Raniere and Saltzman started a company called Executive Success Programs, ESP, where people could learn different ways to get better at things. After a few years, they changed the name to NXIVM. Raniere started calling himself Vanguard because it sounded strong, like a video game he liked where beating enemies made you more powerful. NXIVM was based on ideas from Ayn Rand, a writer Raniere really liked. In 2002, Raniere and Saltzman got some members from the important Bronfman family to join NXIVM. The Bronfmans were very rich, with a fortune from the Seagram's business. Sarah Bronfman got involved first, and later, her sister Claire Bronfman joined too. Even their father, Edgar Bronfman Sr., took a course with NXIVM the next year. Raniere's 8-year relationship with Tony Natalie ended in 1999. Tony said she was harassed by him later. In 2003, a judge suggested that Raniere might be using a lawsuit to get back at his ex-girlfriend, saying it seemed like he was trying to get back at her. In 2011, Natalie filed documents in federal court alleging that she had been repeatedly raped by Raniere. At first glance, NXIVM appeared to be a sanctuary for self-improvement, promising enlightenment and success. But behind closed doors, a darker truth was waiting to be unveiled. Public accusations of sexually predatory behavior and inappropriate relationships with minors began trailing Raniere in the early 2010s. Soon after his arrest in 2018, prosecutors opposed bail, writing that Raniere had a decades-long history of abusing women and girls. At his trial, prosecutors introduced evidence that Raniere held views approving sexual assault, child sexual abuse, and incest. In 2012, The Times-Union reported Raniere's inappropriate relationships with underage girls in the 1980s and 1990s. One girl, who chose to remain anonymous, shared that she met Raniere in 1990 at age 12, and he was 30. Raniere offered to help her with school, and one of his partners, Pamela Kafritz, hired her to walk their dog and encouraged her to visit their home. The girl revealed that tutoring sessions were an excuse for inappropriate actions lasting until around 1991. In 1993, she reported the incidents to Abuse Support Services and to the New York police, who didn't forward the complaint to prosecutors because she refused to secretly record Raniere. In the 2019 case against Raniere, accusers stated that from 2002, he gained Svengali-like control over a Mexican family, leading them to move from Monterey to the NXIVM community in Albany. The three sisters became Raniere's sexual partners. The oldest, Mariana, is the mother of Raniere's second child. The middle sister, Daniela, testified about being groomed as a minor and starting a sexual relationship with Raniere shortly after turning 18. The youngest, Camilla, claimed Raniere sexually abused her from age 15 in 2005. The case revealed Raniere impregnated each sister at different times, compelling them to undergo abortions. Daniela added that Kafritz instructed each sister to avoid questions about paternity to protect Raniere from mandated reporters. According to Daniela, who testified for the prosecution at Raniere's trial, Raniere claimed that he had mystical powers and could help people grow spiritually and fix disintegrations through sex. The sisters were strongly discouraged from discussing their sexual relationships with Raniere, even between each other. Starting in 2010, Daniela was kept in a room in her family home for 2 years on the pretext that she had stolen money. She said that this happened because she told Raniere she liked another guy. Raniere accused her of an ethical breach and asked Saltzman to help her learn from her mistakes. Daniela described the room as really basic, with covered windows, just a mattress, and some paper and a pen. She could only talk to Saltzman. Her family had to avoid her. This went on until 2012, after she almost attempted suicide. But instead, she left her family's home. After escaping, she went to a volleyball game to find Raniere, but he tried to hide. Later, she was taken out of the NXIVM community and left at the border between the US and Mexico with less than $80 and no personal papers. At the trial, Saltzman supported what Daniela said. She told the court that Daniela tried different things to leave the room, like cleaning up, exercising, and writing letters to Raniere every day. But everything was turned down. Raniere even told Saltzman to ignore a letter from Daniela asking to be let out, saying it was just a tantrum. Saltzman confessed that they treated Daniela very badly, and no matter what she did, it seemed like there was nothing right according to them. At Raniere's trial, prosecutors accused Raniere of the sexual exploitation of Daniela's underage sister Camilla, narrating it through Daniela's testimony, hospital records, and transcripts of Raniere's communication with Camilla, and sexually explicit photos of Camilla found in his home. Prosecutors also introduced WhatsApp messages between Raniere and Camilla, which showed that Raniere considered her as his slave and tasked her with finding more sex slaves, which Raniere calls successors and expresses a preference for women shorter than him, younger, and virgins. While Camilla did not testify during the trial, she confirmed the sexual abuse at Raniere's sentencing in her victim impact statement. Camilla said she met Raniere at age 13 and began a sexual relationship with Raniere when she was aged 15, which lasted for 12 years. The abusive relationship with Raniere continued into her adulthood, where his control and demands led to her developing an eating disorder, self-harming, and attempting suicide. Moreover, in 1984, Raniere seduced and statutorily raped 15-year-old Gina Melita after the two met in a theater group. When their relationship ended, Melita introduced him to her friend Gina Hutchinson, also aged 15, whom he also statutorily raped. When her sister Heidi Hutchinson found Raniere climbing into Gina's bedroom window and confronted the pair, Raniere told her that Hutchinson was a Buddhist goddess meant to be with him. Heidi recalled that, during the late 1980s, Raniere was fascinated by Amway Scientology, and neuro-linguistic programming. Gina dropped out of school and continued her relationship with Raniere, working for a time at CBI. On October 11, 2002, Gina, 33, was found dead of a gunshot wound at the Karma Triana Dharmachakra Buddhist Monastery in Woodstock, New York, in an apparent suicide. According to Frank Parlato, a former NXIVM publicist, a source close to Raniere claimed he discussed various suicide methods with Gina and even sent her images to comment on. Raniere would often take her to movies with suicide scenes and question if suicide could ever be justified. Allegedly, when Raniere found out Gina had another boyfriend, he said she had to ascend to the level of a goddess by leaving her body. Kristen Snyder, a 35-year-old environmental consultant, paid $7,000 for a 16-day ESP course in Anchorage, Alaska in November 2002. In January, she visited Raniere and other NXIVM leaders in Albany. Snyder's mother noted her daughter believed she had caused the Columbia shuttle disaster and thought highly of Keith. Snyder signed up for a second ESP course in Anchorage and, on the 10th day, claimed to be pregnant with Raniere's child. She disappeared after this session, leaving a note expressing feeling brainwashed and her internal organs rotting. Her car was found in Seward, Alaska, 2 days later, with a note saying not to search for her body. During Raniere's trial, a witness testified that Raniere paid $24,000 for the password to Snyder's email after she vanished. Barbara Jeske, a 63-year-old Michigan State University graduate and early ESP recruiter, died from brain cancer on September 3, 2014, becoming Raniere's top assistant in NXIVM. Diagnosed in 2014, Raniere misled her about having carpal tunnel syndrome. On November 7, 2016, 57-year-old Pamela Kafritz, another senior NXIVM member, died from renal cancer. Both were diagnosed with cancer while living with Raniere. 2 other women survived cancer. After Kafritz's death, Raniere and others used her identity and credit card, charging over $300,000. In 2009, Raniere claimed to have people killed due to his beliefs. In 2015, Raniere established a secret subgroup within NXIVM named DOS, standing for Dominus Obsequitus Sororium. DOS had a hierarchy, with women as slaves led by masters. Slaves were expected to recruit others, eventually becoming masters themselves. Approximately 150 women joined, with Raniere as the sole male grandmaster at the pyramid's top. He recruited 8 initial members, including Allison Mack, Nikki Klein, and Lauren Saltzman, forming an inner circle. New recruits were deceived about Raniere's role, thinking it was a women's empowerment group. Raniere controlled DOS members through collateral, sensitive personal information, sexually explicit photos or videos, and rights to personal assets. His inner circle carried out his orders, building the DOS pyramid. Joining required providing collateral, and slaves had to renew it monthly. They were told it could be released if they left DOS, spoke publicly about it, or failed obligations. After the Times article, Raniere and his inner circle escaped to Mexico. An email account search warrant was issued on January 18, 2018. The FBI filed a sealed criminal complaint and obtained an arrest warrant on February 14th from the United States Court of the Eastern District of New York. On March 26, Mexican federal police found Raniere in a Puerto Vallarta villa, arresting and deporting him as persona non grata. Saltzman later testified that when police arrived, she and Raniere barricaded themselves in the master suite, with Raniere attempting to hide in a walk-in closet. American authorities apprehended Raniere, presenting him in federal court in Fort Worth, Texas, before transferring him to the Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC, in New York City. The unsealed complaint implicated Raniere in various crimes related to DOS, including sex trafficking, conspiracy for sex trafficking, and conspiracy to commit forced labor. It alleged that Raniere coerced at least one woman into having sex with him and forced DOS members into the branding ritual described by former members. U.S. Attorney Richard Donahue asserted that Raniere established a covert group of women with whom he engaged in intimate relations, branding them with his initials, while coercing compliance through threats of revealing personal information and seizing their assets. From his 2018 arraignment in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York until his sentencing in 2021, prosecutors aimed to keep Raniere detained at the MDC. Raniere's legal team requested his release on bail, but prosecutors objected, pointing to Raniere's unreliable statements about his income and his prior attempt to flee to Mexico. Convicted in June 2019, Raniere's sentencing was delayed over a year due to the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on prisons. Communicating with his supporter Sunil Chakravarti while at the MDC, Raniere's conversations were recorded and released as a podcast called Raniere Speaks. In 2020, with pandemic restrictions, his followers, including Klein, danced near the jail, forming a group called the Forgotten Ones, or We Are As You. A Bureau of Prisons memo in July 2020 stated Raniere instructed followers, including Chakravarti, to have women dance erotically. Authorities moved Raniere to another unit to block his view of the dancers. Frustrated, he urged followers to gain favor with prison staff for his return by offering coffee and donuts. Prosecutors, ahead of Raniere's sentencing, presented evidence of his communications and prison disciplinary issues as signs of his lack of remorse and continued control over followers. The submissions included Raniere instructing his followers to involve Alan Dershowitz in his defense and using a false name and burner phone to evade detection. Prosecutors sought life imprisonment, emphasizing his lack of remorse and ongoing contact with NXIVM members. On October 27, 2020, Judge Garifas sentenced Raniere to 120 years in prison and fined him $1.75 million. He was transferred to USP Lewisburg in Pennsylvania and then to USP Tucson in Arizona, a maximum security facility for sex offenders. On July 20, 2021, Raniere, appearing virtually, faced a restitution hearing. Claire Bronfman, a co-defendant, paid attorneys Mark Furnich and Jeffrey Leichtman to represent him. Judge Garifas ordered restitution of $3.46 million for 21 victims, covering scarification removal, mental health care, and compensation for labor trafficking victims. The order mandated the return of collateral to lower-ranking DOS members, pending a ruling on Raniere's appeal. Raniere appealed his conviction and sentence to the Second Circuit, with oral arguments heard on May 3, 2022. The circuit upheld the decision on December 9, 2022. Judge Jose A. Cabranes noted, Raniere has failed to persuade us that there is insufficient evidence to sustain his convictions. In January 2020, Raniere and several other NXIVM leaders were named as defendants in a civil lawsuit filed in federal court by 80 former NXIVM members. The lawsuit details allegations of fraud and abuse and charges NXIVM with being a pyramid scheme, exploitation of its recruits, conducting illegal human experiments, and making it physically and psychologically difficult, and in some cases impossible, to leave the coercive community. This case is ongoing as of March 2023. In May 2022, Raniere sued the U.S. Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Prisons, claiming his civil rights were violated at USP Tucson. He sought an injunction for visitation and calls from Chakravarti, whom he called a paralegal working on his appeals. The authorities moved to deny, arguing Chakravarti was not a paralegal, but an ardent former ESP and NXIVM coach Raniere was banned from associating with. Judge Rainer Collins dismissed the suit, citing Raniere's failure to exhaust administrative remedies and insufficient service of processes under the Prison Litigation Reform Act. In the chilling aftermath of Keith Raniere's unsettling narrative, we're left to grapple with the profound questions that echo through the corridors of manipulation and charisma. How does one charismatic leader wield such influence? And what safeguards can we establish to protect against the seduction of manipulation without stifling the essence of individuality? As we navigate the uncertain terrain ahead, let the lessons from the cautionary tale of NXIVM become a cornerstone for building a society that upholds the true essence of individuality while safeguarding against the shadows of manipulation.